and because of this, they have enough seeds. Now, that, to me, suggests a sense of awareness and even a sense of purpose in their life.
Well, I mean, obviously, any plant matter, anything that's alive, responds to stimuli. So, you know, you deny plants water, you deny them air, you deny them sun, they're going to die. But physiologically speaking, they don't have the capacity to feel pain. Although, sorry?
I was going to think, token Darwin's claims, a lot of his kind of things we made are kind of unfounded, so we have no proof that animals necessarily are sentient like they are longer.
Well, we have an awful lot of proof. Although I would say that even if they didn't, you'll save 19 times as many of them. Plants, that is. If plants do feel pain by eating them directly, you're allowing 20 times as many, not to die. Because of the vast inefficiency of cycling crops for animals.
Ethically, that would still mean that eating anything, period. It's the only goes autotropism, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for people in the audience who think that there's a moral equivalency between lighting a cat's tail on fire and mowing your lawn, that argument makes some sense, but I think most people recognize that animals like us, they're made of the same 5 things that we're made of. They're made of the same things that we are, flesh and blood and bone. They have the same 5 physiological senses that we do. And there really is scientific unanimity on the issue of pain, that birds, fin fish, and mammals feel pain, and that plants don't feel pain. And then there are some animals who are sort of in between, where there is some scientific debate.
They don't feel pain, okay, it's destroyed.
Well, I'm not saying that it's okay to destroy them, but really, I mean, I'm not saying at all that veganism is about moral purity. I'm saying veganism is about doing the best we can, and that if you're looking at environmentalism, which actually does go to your point, I mean, if you want to consume something that requires 20 times the plant death of something else, growing 20 times as many plants to feed them to chickens so that we can eat the chickens, even if you grant the idea, and certainly if you grant the idea, that we should minimize the amount of plant life we take, it would still make sense to be vegan to, times 20. You've got the animal just on top of the 20 times as many plants you're killing. But I do think that I think that you would be hard-pressed to come up with many scientists that agree with you on the issue of whether animals have sentience. And I did just want to read a couple of quick things from scientific reports about animal intelligence. I agree with Peter Singer that when what we're discussing is the being's right to be free from pain and suffering, the morally relevant variable is that being's capacity to feel pain and suffer. But what we have also learned, for those of us in the audience who would never eat a dog or a cat, is that chickens and pigs do better on cognition tests than dogs or cats. Chickens and pigs are smarter. And a couple interesting things. Discovery Magazine, chickens do not just live in the present, but can anticipate the future and demonstrate self-control, something previously attributed only to humans and other primates, according to a recent study. About rats from a University of Georgia study, they're capable of complex form of thinking before known only to exist in humans and other primates, the capacity to reflect on what they do and do not know. The UK's largest daily paper reporting on research from the University of Bristol, pigs have proved that they are at least as clever as chimpanzees with their first forays into video games, which, by the way, is about the cutest thing you can ever see. You go to the GoVeg.com website, click on videos, scroll down to educational, you can see the pig with a mouth going like this, and the dog is just looking at the thing completely befuddled. It's really awesome. And there's also stuff there, there's chickens learning from one another, chickens learning from TV, from watching television, chickens learning to navigate mazes. I mean, what Richard Dawkins and Temple Grandin and other animal behaviorists say is that the same evolutionary way that humans and other species, we're not the pinnacle of creation. Evolution worked like this. It didn't work where humans are at the top. It worked like this. And all species have their evolutionary component. And the same way that we evolved physiologically, we evolved psychologically, and that's true of all species, not just human beings.
Well, that touches on my second question. Why don't, purely on the ethics and moral standpoint, not from the other factors, but why don't they apply universally then to if other creatures are nearly equally as intelligent? If predators are allowed to prey, etc. Like that.
Well, I think most of us would agree that rape is a moral bad, right?
Correct.
But some species procreate by rape, and we're not going to say because some species procreate by rape, suddenly that's okay for human beings. And when we're discussing,
that's a compliment being slightly less intelligent or capable in facilities.
Well, sure, and I certainly agree with that. I mean, I think when we're discussing what we should do, we look at the alternatives and we choose the thing that causes the least harm. And what my contention is, for people who care about the environment, if that's the only thing you care about, veganism is the only way to go. From a dietary standpoint, similarly with global poverty, similarly with cruelty to animals. Once you add it all up, it makes, I think, an ironclad ethical case.
I mean, I would like to actually get back to the heart of what you're talking about, the cognition. And I think it's illuminating to note that when Bruce is describing cognition in animals, it's compared to cognition in humans. Now, as far as philosophy and ethics go, this is clearly an anthrocentric point of view. And anthropocentrism was precisely the grounds on which they decided to extend these supposed rights to animals. Now, the logical extension would be to go farther and to go with anything with consciousness. And the fact that plants don't have the same physiological structures and nerves and brains as we do does not mean that they're not aware and that they're not communicating. I agree. I believe that this is a matter of degree, and that if that is said, there's no reason to say that a vegetarian lifestyle is the only ethical way to go, even with respect to the lives of what you're eating.
I mean, I could just say that animals are hungry. The whole rate change in condition, that's just like kind of the...
We can't hear you.
Well, I guess I would just say if you decide that you don't want to buy,
release them into the wild. So, while I agree with all of the responses you gave to his question, my question to you is what ethically can you do with the farm animals that already exist if everyone was to switch to vegetarianism?
well, people switch slowly, right? I mean, people aren't going to switch overnight. It's worth remembering that pigs are slaughtered when they're about 6 months old. Turkeys are less than 6 months old. Chickens are not even 2 months old when they're slaughtered. So capitalism being what it is, it's a case of if everybody in this room who wasn't already vegetarian went vegetarian, the demand for meat would go down, somewhat infinitesimally. As the demand went down, the price went down, the supply would go down, and eventually we get to zero.
That works at a cap. I understand what you mean systematically, but that's still ignoring what happens to the animals that are already here.
Well, right. They will still be eaten. The price will go down slightly, and eventually they will just not be raised in order to be eaten. Okay. So in the United States, we raise about 10 billion animals every single year just to slaughter and eat them. We would stop doing that.
Okay, so I haven't visited poly-based farms, so I wasn't aware that they were doing the chickens like you were saying. Leaving, killing animals for meat aside and just focusing on, not a vegetarian argument, but a vegan argument. So I just got back from Yucatan, actually, and the house I was staying at had a flock of turkeys and chickens in their backyard, which just wandered around and had full range of, about an acre of land. And they were wandering all around, and they were pretty happy looking to me, and they were completely fine, and that's what the eggs they would use at their house, and I don't see really a reason why that's unethical, or why they're in suffering for every second of their life, like you were saying.
No, I do think that eggs from companion chickens are the ethical exception to veganism. It's an extraordinarily rare thing, but if the folks at Farm Sanctuary, they don't eat the eggs, so the folks at United Poultry Concerns wanted to eat those eggs, I don't think there would be an ethical objection to that, and that's the one exception I would think to the vegan argument.
So if
we should probably try to have people who haven't already asked questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we're hitting some people.
Yeah,
New ones and some people not at all.
I think I have a good order.
Okay, sorry.
If your argument holds that is an exception to the rule, then the question that we're looking at is eating meat unethical becomes irrelevant. What you're arguing is that is the system under which we eat meat unethical, and I would agree with you that it is. But the underlying principle of eating meat or not eating meat is, by your own admission, irrelevant to this argument.
Well, no. If we were discussing veganism and you wanted to say there is one exception to the vegan rule, then I would agree with you. There isn't an exception to the meat eating rule, as we discussed earlier. The environmental argument becomes stronger on the sort of farm that he was discussing. The global poverty argument becomes stronger.